Good morning, everyone. It's Ben Buckner and Dan Bossy with Ag Resource Company. It's Monday, June 30th. Of course, USDA NASS report day. We get stocks and seedings in a matter of hours. And I guess we're kind of waiting on potential surprises. We know that those do come up every now and again in these stocks reports. But I think that's kind of what the markets are down to. Is there a big change in acreage? Probably not. Our records would show that that doesn't often happen unless you have pretty dire spring Midwest weather, which we avoided, of course, this year. And then we've got stocks, of course, that we don't know. But I think unless there is a big change in acreage, we're still getting prepared for these large U.S. crops, probably northern hemisphere crops. So we'll break down weather as we usually do, but don't see a big threat. Otherwise, Dan, what else do you got this morning until we get to the report?
Well, I think that's right, Ben. It is about the report coming up later today. But let me also mention in the background, we have this thing called 45Z, which is, of course, a subsidy program for biofuels being debated by the Congress. Over the weekend, the Senate's version took out 2 years. We went from 31 to 29 for budgetary reasons. But we then made it more like the House bill so that you could only include North American produced, let's say, feedstock. So out would be, of course, Brazilian tallow or Chinese UCO. And this gave the soybean oil market a rally and brought soybeans along. So when you see the soybean market higher and you see the grains lower, that's in the background of why that happened. This is what's expected for the report. As Ben indicated, people looking for about an unchanged corn number. 95.4 is up 100,000 acres from the March report, and soybeans were looking for 83.5, right the same as March. All wheat's on around 45.5, which again is the same, and cotton about 9.7, down 200,000 acres. So in the background, this is not a big change for a report like this today, and maybe the stocks report will have more importance. But in the background, again, saying that when you look at this, the surprise would be a surge in corn acres or a drop in bean acres as we think forward. So good luck with the report. We expect at Ag Resource the corn number to be a little more bearish, also to find a few more soybean acres. We'll see how that all plays out. But in the background, again, maybe the stocks numbers are as important as seedings as we go today. Looking at other things in the market, the CRB index, of course, collapsed last week with the drop in energy. We are now back into the range, so that old 2022 high is held. We talked about that funds are looking at the end of the month today, and there's probably more liquidation to come with everything except for livestock. So in the background of all of this, look for the energy markets and other things to be somewhat pressured as we think about end of month selling that would go forward. Also, as we look at where we're at in terms of U.S. exports, one of the things at Ag Resource we think very confidently about is that USDA is way too high on their corn and soybean exports for the 25-26 crop year without China. So if you look here, this is Brazilian soybean exports with vessel counts for the month of July, and we're down substantially, as you can see. So what this is going to do because of the larger Brazilian soybean crop is extend their selling season all the way into the end of the year. So they'll be shipping a fair amount of soybeans, and China's rumored this morning to be buying October soybeans from Brazil, not from the United States. So again, USDA likely going forward will adjust corn and soybean exports down. And I bring up the next chart to highlight that even further. This is Brazilian cumulative weekly corn export commitments. Notice that the 5-year seasonal there is in black with the brackets around it. We are well below that. So although Brazil has this record large corn crop of probably 145 to 150 million metric tons, their export season for corn is not starting out very robust. Now, the Brazilian farmer is holding back. Of course, Brazil will increase their ethanol grind another 3 million metric tons, but that is not going to sop up the available corn supply within Brazil. And so that is pressuring or likely to pressure U.S. exports longer term. So I'd be thinking more of U.S. corn exports in a new crop position between 2.2 and 2.3 billion bushels now. We'll see how this plays out, but that just adds to the pile if we don't have any weather problems this summer. Lastly, talking a little bit about weather as we're heading into that pollination, we've highlighted for you in other videos that the 50% U.S. corn pollination date is July 13th this year. Notice that on this forecast, this is the last 10 days of the European weather model. You can see that there's really no excessive heat across the central U.S. Any excessive heat will be across Western Canada or the Western US. We're temperate across the Midwest. So when I look at that time frame from like about July 4th up until July 14th, notice there's a lack of heat, no real threat to the corn pollination, nothing to burn back silks here of importance. And so we're looking for rather normal, non-threatening weather. And when I include rainfall to that, okay, July may not be as wet as June, but as you look at it, we're still seeing plenty of rain. There will be these ridge riding storm systems that cross across the central U.S. So in a broad sense, U.S. weather is generally favorable, non-threatening, and we have no reason today to back away from what we would see what we would see trend line yields at about 180 bushels of corn, maybe 52 and a half bushels of beans. So Ben, as we look at it, we'll get to the report. Good luck, everyone. But as I stand back from things, I don't see anything here that's going to give the bulls a big jolt in the arm. And I think a lot of people will be looking at selling corn if we don't see a big deviation in the corn seedings number here this morning.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think we'll be watching after this, and of course, whether the report data this morning. But what happens to the Brazilian corn market? Mato Grosso is only about a quarter harvested on their safrinha crop, and that's way behind schedule. So we'll see if that market can withstand just the sheer amount of tons that are coming to be harvested and do, I think, kind of supersede domestic needs at some point in the next couple of weeks. So that will be hyper focused on the Brazilian cash corn market and what that means for the U.S. balance sheet and U.S. prices. But for today, a dollar gets you in 30 days. We're going to have brand new balance sheets across the board, at about noon Chicago time today. So it is kind of a game-changing potentially numbers, but again, I think that the game to us is still one of large to oversupplied stuff if we don't have major weather threats. So again, all the best in the markets today, and we'll be back at you with the details of the report tomorrow morning. Thanks for watching.